All right, welcome to Hoops Tonight, presented by FanDuel here at The Volume. Happy Wednesday, everybody. Hope you're all having a great week. You're halfway through it. We're almost to some relaxation this weekend. Wow, what an incredible performance from Giannis. What an incredible performance from the Bucks, from Bobby Portis, from Jrue Holiday. Just a championship medal type of performance and a pantheon type of game from Giannis Antetokounmpo. We're going to break down every single detail of this game. Couple of quick notes before we get started. Make sure you like this video and subscribe to the Volume's YouTube channel. We're going to be going live every day this week, with the exception of after tonight's game. There's a special thing that the Volume has planned. I will be doing a breakdown of the Warriors game. It will just be recorded and posted to YouTube after the game. But make sure you come back every other day this week. We'll be going live after the final game of the night. And then make sure you follow me on Twitter at _JasonLT so you guys can see the basketball video that backs up a lot of the concepts that I talk about on the show. We can't start anywhere but with Giannis. I said coming into this series, and a lot of people, and Boston Celtics, they produce a certain vitriol from the rest of the basketball community. So everyone obviously has a lot of pushback towards any optimism directed in the direction of Boston. But I said before the series that Giannis overcoming this Celtics team would be similar to LeBron overcoming the 07 Pistons. Specifically because the 07 Pistons were an unbelievably great defensive team. That's where they hung their hat. And LeBron was in a situation where he had some creation support, but not much. And it was basically him against, essentially he was responsible for any and all offensive creation in that series, which reminds me a lot of the predicament that Milwaukee was in this series on account of the Chris Middleton injury. And, about halfway through the series, it dawned on me that he was a lot more capable of pulling that off even than I originally thought. But even going into that game 4, when Milwaukee was up 2-1, Boston still was controlling a lot of the areas of the series that made it seem as though they were in control. But there's one thing that was starting to pick up some steam, and it was Giannis. I talked to you guys a lot about the idea of breaking down the wall. It's really easy to stay, well, not really easy. It's possible to stay in front of Giannis once, twice, 5 times, 10 times, 25 times. And guys like Horford and Grant Williams did a lot to start this series. But it's that 50th time and that 60th time and that 70th time that he starts to wear on you. And he starts to get to the point where now he's getting around you rather than having to go through you. Now the refs are no longer a factor. And he's just getting all the way to the rim. And that is the weirdest dynamic of trying to play against Giannis in a playoff series. Because normally you can expect to wear people down, particularly stars, because they have so much on their plate. But Giannis just seems to have the reverse effect on people. It's another great LeBron comparison. It's interesting because the two of them are so different in so many different ways, but they have a lot of similarities. And one of them is both of them historically in their careers have been longevity guys. And I'm not talking about, or I should say endurance guys. They are guys that as the series progresses, they get stronger. And multiple times in Giannis's career, especially of late, we've seen him come from behind. We saw him come from behind against Brooklyn. We saw him come from behind against the Suns in the finals last year, down 2-0. You think you got him? You think he's down and dead to rights? But what did I say after game 4? Game 4 could have been a victory lap for me. At least that's what it seemed like in the moment, right? Like I picked Boston. I picked them to win game 4. I figured they would win by 10, 15 points in that game, and they had a 10-point lead late. But what did I say right after that game? I tweeted the video out in the middle of this game, right at halftime. You can find it there. I said, do not count the Bucks as long as Giannis Antetokounmpo is on the floor and as long as he has a chance. That's how all-time great he is. He is on a fast track to get into some very, very intense basketball conversations involving all-time players. That's the direction he's heading. And tonight, on many different occasions, he hit a level that Boston could not keep up with. In that late second quarter, Boston gets up, I think, 12 or 13 points. I can't remember exactly what. He checks in. I think he checked back in with about 4 minutes left in the second quarter and just was completely unstoppable going to the rim. I think he was 7 for 7 from the field in the quarter, just living at the basket. Boston couldn't do anything with him. Completely changed the complexion of the game. If Giannis doesn't do that, they probably go into the halftime looking a lot like game 2, when Boston was up 65-40. That's where the game was trending. That's the direction this was all headed in. And Giannis staved that off and sent you into halftime down 7. And then I thought 2 unbelievably massive 3-point shots from Giannis in the fourth quarter. All series long, Stan Van Gundy's been on the broadcast talking about every time Giannis takes a jump shot, it feels like giving a gift to the other team. And he was right. Giannis has shot horrifically bad from the perimeter this year. Coming into tonight, I think he was right around 35% from mid-range, and then from 3, it was way worse than that. So every time Giannis has shot a jump shot, it's been a win for the other team. But against all odds, reaching down into that greatness that's inside of him, he stepped up and he knocked down 2 incredibly massive 3-point shots in this game in the second half. One of them came right after a monster 3 from Jaylen Brown off the dribble. Jaylen Brown knocks down this ridiculous step back 3. I think it put Boston up 11. And here comes Giannis right down, early shot clock, left wing. It was a screw you type of shot. It was like I'm not losing this game type of shot. And he knocked it down. And then there at the end, on the offensive rebound, kick out to him at the top of the key. There's a fresh clock. There's 14 seconds. He doesn't need to shoot that. But he just stepped into it and knocked it down. And then there down the stretch, a huge offensive rebound underneath the basket. Offensive rebounding was a massive swing factor in this game. We'll get to it in a little bit. Bobby Portis was unbelievable. He had 7 offensive rebounds in this game. Milwaukee had 20 second chance points. Huge swing in this game. Giannis had 2 big offensive rebounds himself. Just an unbelievable performance. This is what it looks like. This is, game 5 back in Detroit in 2007. LeBron hit a level that the Pistons could not keep up with, and it changed the outcome of a series. And ironically, they went home after that, and in Detroit or in Cleveland, LeBron didn't have a great game, and his teammates carried him. That will be the ultimate parallel, as if they go back to Milwaukee in a couple of days, and they win Game 6 at home, and Giannis doesn't play particularly well. Then it'll be the ultimate mirror image there. But he reached down, and he had his big Game 5 moment. And I know a lot of people, I've had some Bucks fans complain, why do you bring up LeBron? I bring up LeBron because he's the standard. LeBron and MJ, those guys are the standard. Giannis is on that trajectory. It's time for us to start having those conversations. If Giannis wins another title this year, which he's very much in that conversation, they get out of this series, then they're going to probably be the favorite in the next series. I've been on the record that I think whoever wins this series is going to win the East. So you're probably a favorite in the conference finals, and then anything can happen in the finals. We've seen Giannis beat Phoenix. So if Giannis gets this title, if he wins this championship, he is fast progressing into those conversations long before we ever even could have thought he would have. And I've just been unbelievably impressed. Obviously, even in Boston controlling this series through 4 games, I just was completely blown away throughout the entire process by Giannis's greatness. But there's 2 sides to this coin. Because if you guys remember, after Game 4, I said there were 2 things that would give Milwaukee a chance to win this series. I said it was Giannis and his unguardability, his unbelievable greatness, and just the level he can reach that nobody in the world can reach, and Boston and their lack of discipline and their lack of consistency in their own pathway to success. In my notes, I put, let me make sure I'm reading this right? I put in my notes Boston's title prospects, and I put that in there when Boston was up by 13 in the third quarter. And the reason why I put it in there, or shortly after they went up by 13, because even when Boston was in control of this game and I thought they were going to win, I was becoming more and more pessimistic about them. Not necessarily for this series, because at the time I thought they were going to win, but looking forward, because they have the most dramatic difference between their ceiling and their floor out of any of the teams in this field. If you look at the contenders, and if we're looking at the real contenders in this field, it's kind of like Phoenix, Golden State, Boston, Milwaukee, right? And in that list, you've got a Phoenix team that is extremely disciplined, that doesn't make mistakes, that doesn't lose their identity, that stays like they've got that veteran presence. I don't know if it comes from Chris Paul or if it's hard to say where it comes from, but that team is incredibly disciplined. Golden State has consistently been the most grown-up team. They're literally beating a Memphis team soundly based on their own experience and their discipline. And then we go out east and we look at Milwaukee, and this whole series has been a story about Milwaukee being the older, wiser, smarter, more disciplined team. And you know, extensively in this series, I've been preaching about how when Boston in the half court makes smart reads and plays smart basketball, they get good shots and they win. When they get sloppy, undisciplined, when they settle for long contested jump shots, when they take threes early in the shot clock, when they turn the basketball over, Milwaukee runs it right down their throat and scores. Yet, even though that was clearly evident in the film, even though Ime Udoka explicitly talked about this in the pregame presser in Game 2, so we know Boston knows about it, they still can't help themselves. They cannot help themselves. Anytime they get up in this series or have any sort of success, they revert back to the things that represent their floor. When Boston is at their peak, they have the best defense of this era in conjunction with a great combination of guys that can all pass, dribble, and shoot. And so they're extremely difficult to guard when they play that well right. Remember, from January 23rd through the end of the season, so almost half the season, Boston was the number one offense in the league. And they've been better on offense than Milwaukee in the half court in this series. But that's just, that only represents the ceiling. That only represents what it looks like when it's good. Their floor is considerably lower than any of those teams in that contender list. And it goes to show you the value of having a high-level playmaker. Someone who can really control the pace and flow of a game. Which everywhere else in this field, you see that guy. You see it in Giannis. You see it in Chris Paul. You see it in Steph Curry. You see it in Draymond Green. Those guys are very good at when they see the train getting off the tracks, they're very good at pulling it back in. And Boston doesn't have that guy. It's our biggest weakness right now. Tatum is just as likely to go rogue as any of the other guys. All series long, Jayson Tatum seems like, I'm going to fall down on every single jump shot, even though it's consistently torched us in transition, like consistently torched us. I'm going to fall down on every jump shot, even though I haven't gotten a foul call on any of them. I'm going to keep falling down. And he fell down a half dozen times at least tonight, if not more, and gets burned every single time. There was a play where he was bitching at the ref after a made basket. He went down and made a shot, ran down the floor, bitching at the ref, and Wesley Matthews was wide open on the wing after a made shot, and Wesley Matthews knocked it down. But that's the thing. He's supposed to be your leader, your alpha. And that's the problem. When you've got Marcus Smart, who's not a real point guard, and you've got Jaylen Brown, who's a number 2 or a number 3 type of guy, and you have Jayson Tatum, who's a number 1, but he's not a great playmaker. He's not a great, control the pace of the game type of guy, game manager, whatever you want to call it. They don't have that guy. Their best option in that type of situation, the guy who's the adult in the room, is Al Horford. But the problem is he's not a perimeter initiator, so you can't have him bring the ball up the floor and put everybody into spots. And so this was the risk the whole time. And even after, it was in my notes, even if Boston would have won tonight, I would have had a serious conversation or a serious topic on the show about whether or not I thought they could beat the likes of Phoenix or the likes of Golden State. Because that lack of discipline will get you killed. The main reason why I picked Boston over Milwaukee was the Chris Middleton injury. The main reason why I was high on Boston to win the title was the Devin Booker injury. Those things were the reasons why things kind of opened up for Boston to become the favorite. And since that time, Booker has gotten back, and they can't beat the Bucks. Despite being a minus 200 favorite to start the series, despite being a minus 190 favorite after game 4, despite everything going, like, they were in control despite having extended stretches of bad basketball. They were in control, and they still, on their home court, could not close a 13-point lead late because of their persistent need to fall back into bad habits, missing box outs. This is on Ime Udoka is going to be incensed by this as he's looking into the film, and I'm sure he's going to be talking about it after the game. You can't give up. I think they gave up 17 offensive rebounds, if I remember correctly. I'll have to double check. Bobby Portis had 7 offensive rebounds. They gave up 20 second chance points. Time and time again in the fourth quarter, they weren't boxing out. How many times in that fourth quarter did you see rebounds off of missed free throws? That's the stuff that keeps coaches up at night. And so that's the damn shame in all of this is like, look, there's two stories here tonight. Story one is Giannis Antetokounmpo is demonstrating for us that he is on an all-time great trajectory. And this Milwaukee Bucks team is they're not out of this series yet, but if they escape this series, that buys you time for Chris Middleton to get back. You're a favorite in the next round. This is all kind of lining up for them to make a run at the championship. That's story number one. Story number two is Boston, the heavy favorite, 5.5-point favorite tonight, minus 190 favorite in the series at this point before the game, went out tonight, commanded the game on 2 different occasions. They had a big lead in the second quarter. They blew that, and then they had a big lead in the third quarter, and they blew that too. And at a certain point, like, I don't know, if Boston ends up losing this series, that's going to be a thing that they're going to have to confront this offseason. Who's going to be the adult on the perimeter? Who's going to be the guy that can settle them down? Because that's one of the weaknesses of modern basketball, and having your Jayson Tatum type of guy be a guy who's bringing the ball up the floor and running offense. It's a unique skill. I talk with Carson all the time. I think there are 4 guys in the entire league that are really high-level game managers. LeBron, Luka, Doncic, and Chris Paul. A lot of people struggle with that. I think you could make a case that Steph is on that tier 2. You can make a case that Giannis is on that tier 2, but there's not a lot of guys that can do that. But there are lower level guys that can at least replicate that to a certain extent. Think of like a Ricky Rubio type of player, just a savvy. Tyus Jones is kind of doing this for Memphis right now. Just an old school point guard, somebody that can be like, hey, let's stop taking stupid shots. Let's get into our positions and let's run sets. That's part of the game. I want to hit on a bunch of other specific details about this game. Let's talk about Mike Budenholzer for a minute, and specifically his strategy. So I went on with Matt Moore from the Action Network on his podcast yesterday, and we talked about this game, and I talked about how I wanted Milwaukee to drop Brook Lopez out of the lineup entirely and lean into switching more. And any of you guys who have been following me for a long time know I'm a big believer in switching as a strategy, especially juxtaposed with drop coverages. And the main reason why is because I think it stagnates teams and it baits teams into bad isolation shot selection. If you guys look at my Twitter feed throughout that game, even when Boston was in control, I kept begging for them to pull Brook, and they finally did in that fourth quarter. Actually, it was like late third quarter. Budenholzer pulled Lopez, went with Bobby Portis and Giannis. They started switching every screen, and what happened? Boston became a pull-up jump shooting team, with the exception of a handful of aggressive drives to the rim. It is human nature, the way that switching can cause the game to denigrate down into isolation basketball. Because if you're running a pick and roll, and you're running an action, or you're running a set, and they switch it well, nothing's open. And so everyone's kind of staring at each other like, what do we do? Now, what you're supposed to do to attack a switching defense is get dribble penetration. If you get dribble penetration, you force help. If you force help, you can swing to someone on the wing. If you swing to someone on the wing and they're open, either the defense has to rotate, and you can attack that closeout, and that's when you can further compromise the defense and get wide open shots. But more often than not, what ends up happening is the Jayson Tatum types and the Jaylen Brown types get into those situations, you start switching screens on them, they start looking at Wesley Matthews and they start thinking, it's time to take a pull-up jump shot. Instead of understanding that that's exactly what they want you to do. Even if you make it, that's exactly what they want you to do. They are baiting you into that. Coming into tonight, in 111 minutes this series with Brook on the floor, the Bucks had a minus 11.5 net rating. So they were getting outscored by 11.5 points per 100 possessions with Brook on the floor. In 81 minutes without Brook in this series coming into tonight, they were a plus 2.3 net, and they were better on both ends. Tonight, they were minus 3 with Brook, plus 6 without him. And the main reason why is, like, you know, even forget about the everything I just said about switching for a second. In addition to that, what happens when you run drop coverages, which is what they do with Brook on the floor, what happens when you run drop coverages is players get disconnected from the ball handler because they die on the screen. There are a handful of guys in the league that do amazing at it. Like, for instance, Mikal Bridges is putting on a drop coverage clinic in this postseason for Phoenix. But for the most part, people die on the screens, especially because the refs allow a ton of contact on those ball screens. You're seeing a moving pick on those ball screens almost every time for every team in the league. But what happens is the defender gets disconnected. And so now from the three-point line to basically to the charge circle, Tatum, Brown, Marcus Smart, all these guys are operating free. There's nobody on them. Now, yes, they're trying to bait you into a mid-range jump shot, right? So there's another element to that, but it's about comfort. When you are allowing them to be comfortable because they are disconnected from the defense temporarily in that zone. Whereas when you switch everything, there's no time on the floor where you're disconnected unless you drive by somebody. And driving by people takes energy. And driving by people, it takes a very intentional effort. And so because of that, it's easy to get baited out of that. It's easy to get wrapped up into taking pull-up jump shots, especially when all you worked on all offseason was your turnaround jump shot and your step-back jump shot and your sidestep jump shot and your hesitation pull-up jump shot, because those are the things you work on when you do skill work. And it's just what you get baited into in one-on-one situations. So to Bud's credit, and you guys could see my tweets during the game, I'm like, when is Bud going to do it? When is Bud going to bench Lopez? Is he saving it for later? Well, turns out he was saving it for later. And I would imagine that his thought process there was, I need Brook to eat minutes for as long as possible in this early stretch in the game. And then at the end of the game, I'll be able to go to this and I won't exhaust Giannis, because there definitely was some stuff in game 4 where Giannis was getting tired. But, you know, looking forward in the series, can't count Boston out. Boston, man, I had Boston won tonight, I would have had game 6 as a coin flip. But I was prepared to come on here and say, bet whoever the underdog is. Like, if Milwaukee was +2, I'd have bet Milwaukee. If Boston was +2, I'd have bet Boston, because to me, that game 6 would have been a textbook coin flip had Boston lost. Or had Boston won, excuse me. Seeing as they lost, now Boston has a huge motivational advantage going into game 6. So it's not, here's the thing, it's not over. Boston still has the better defense. Boston still has the better half-court offense when they play the way they want to play, when they play the way they're supposed to play. But ask yourself, guys, you Celtics fans that are listening, do you believe this Boston team can stay disciplined? They were extremely undisciplined in game 1. They were pretty undisciplined in the second half of game 2. They were really undisciplined for the first 3 quarters of game 3. Game 4, they were really undisciplined the first 3 quarters, and then they locked into the fourth quarter and closed the deal. And then in game 5, in the second quarter and the fourth quarter, they lost their discipline again. They consistently they're like Jekyll and Hyde. They're a Jekyll and Hyde basketball team. And so, who are you going to bet on? Are you going to bet on the championship team that has an opportunity to close Boston out at home? Or are you going to bet on the better team that who knows what's going to happen when they show up? All of the film and everything has been demonstrated. I guarantee you, Ime Udoka has said this a half dozen times to them in the series. When you guys play the right way, they can't guard you. When you guys play the right way, they can't score on you. But they can't help themselves. They can't help themselves. It's an interesting basketball dynamic, because this Boston team is damn near a perfect team in the way they're constructed, except for the adult ball handler, the veteran savvy guard that knows when the game is getting off the rails. Think about how many times tonight in like a pivotal situation you would see, someone throw the ball to Grant Williams and then they're like denying Tatum and denying Brown and no one's cutting to get open, and then Grant Williams tries to put the ball on the floor and he gets the ball poked away. Or how many times you'd see Jaylen Brown or Jayson Tatum drive into traffic and not really know what they're doing. It's just the difference between high-level game management and everything else that's on the table. And that'll be here's the thing. If they don't add that type of guy, if they don't figure that out, then it's on Tatum to develop into that. He has to learn. He has to learn to understand that his job isn't just to score or to create shots for his teammates, but to manage the game, to feel what's happening around you. Yeah, what do you guys think, encouraged Giannis to take those 2 threes in that second half? LeBron used to do this a lot too. Again, I keep doing the LeBron comps with Giannis, so they just have so many similarities in their rise. But like that 3 that he took after Jaylen Brown took the step back, all that is him feeling the train getting off the tracks and understanding that if he can knock that shot down, it changes the complexion of the game. Same thing on the offensive rebound 3. That's him feeling the situation. Even on Jrue Holiday on that last second play, Jrue Holiday was unbelievable tonight. 24, 8, and 8. In all 3 wins, he's been excellent. But on that block, the final block on Marcus Smart, how many times have they sent a random double team to Marcus Smart in this series? Almost never. On dozens of drives. That's Jrue Holiday feeling the moment. That's him understanding what was happening on the train tracks. He read the situation and goes, oh, Marcus isn't passing that. Marcus has his head down. He's going to the rim. And so Jrue bailed on his man and hard doubled Marcus Smart and got a block. That's all just savvy, championship medal, experience, everything that you see in championship teams. And the coolest part about it is that's the monkey that gets off your back when you win a title. There's a next level of confidence and comfort that comes from you being there before, especially when you've been down, especially when you've been behind in a series. You know what it takes to come back. But just in summation, just unbelievable performance from Giannis. We're going to have some really serious conversations about the trajectory that he's on, because it's not a Kevin Durant trajectory. It's not a Steph Curry trajectory. He's on a LeBron trajectory. He's on a Michael Jordan trajectory. That's the pace that he's at to this point in his career. And I have not been this blown away by how good a basketball player is since LeBron in the early 2010s. That's the level that he's reaching. And then, story of the series has been Giannis's greatness and Boston's inconsistent, just basketball IQ. And it bit them in the ass again. I tweeted out early fourth quarter, I tweeted, Boston is playing with fire and it might get them beat. And that's what happened. Boston got beat. Game 6 in a couple of days. Really curious to see what the line is. I would say that it's too early to say that Boston's out. But if I'm Milwaukee, you have an amazing opportunity here to end this series and get Chris Middleton back. They're going to be coming out like gangbusters in that game. That crowd's going to be behind them. Giannis absolutely smells blood in the water. My guess is he's going to go for the kill in Game 6. So at this point, finally, after 5 games, I am no longer on Boston. I think Milwaukee's going to win this series. All right, guys, that is all I have for right now. We do not have a live show after the Warriors game tonight because the Volume has something else special planned. But I will still be coming on here and recording something, and we will get it on YouTube shortly after the final buzzer. As always, I sincerely appreciate your support. Remember that we are going to be going live after every game this week. So please come hang out on YouTube after the final buzzer or the final game of the night. Don't forget to subscribe to the Volume's YouTube channel, subscribe to our newsletter, and follow me on Twitter at _JasonLT for all of my video content. I sincerely appreciate your guys' support, and I will see you later tonight.